It is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Stephanie Lodding RDH. You know her at Now To Wow Hygiene.com. Stephanie is the current immediate past president for the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health. Stephanie is CEO of her own company, Now To Wow Hygiene, and helps to train dentists, hygienists, and teams to a higher level learning and understanding of the oral health connection and how to integrate oral systemics and comprehensive care into the practice. She is known as the $500,000 hygienist with over 10 years of producing over $500,000 a year, working 3 to 4 days a week. That is simply mind-blowing. So many dentists, they're kind of depressed about their hygiene department because 30 years ago when I got out of school, it was indemnity insurance. You just submitted your fees and they paid 100% for a cleaning exam and x-ray. And then over the years, they said, no more of that. We're going to send you the fees. And now 82% of dentists in America are on a PPO, and those fees for hygiene are so low. A lot of dentists sit there and say, Stephanie, I don't even think I'm breaking even in hygiene. I think I lose. I think every time I charge out $1 in hygiene, it costs me $1.10 or $1.15. So why the world would I want to go from one hygienist to two? I mean, hell, if you gave me enough hygienists, I'd go bankrupt. What would you say to the 82% of my homies listening to you that are taking 8 to 12 PPOs and think they're getting their clock cleaned in the hygiene department?
So that is an awesome question to start with.
This is awesome. That's
biggest
usually people say that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. And Stephanie,
no, I love this question because this is what gets me fired up about talking to you and your guests today about the business of hygiene, and hygiene being the business within the business, and understanding that if they partner with hygienists in the practice, and a dentist really can help to look at the right person to bring into the practice as a leader, and really helping to grow the practice within the practice, helping the producer as the hygienist to understand that she's a producer, and we need to look at it as a business within a business. So really, like you're talking about, the 82% of people who have now gone to managed care, it's a big concern. And that's where I get hired into a lot of offices, because what I do is I implement new things into the practice and really get the hygiene program really robust, and looking at whether it's integrating, bringing in hygiene assistants, and really making like those managed care programs. We know that it's a dollars and cents, it's a numbers game, and it's hours in a day and the number of patients that we can put through the chair a lot of times. And that's the frustration that I have with about managed care, is managed care became a system that has really failed in so many ways, because the dentist has really, from a fear-based place, signed onto these programs to try to build their practice, and it hasn't really been a good thing for anyone. It hasn't been good for the patient. It hasn't been good for the practices. And what's happening is it's kind of been a snowball effect of negativity across the industry. And so really what I do is I go in, and if we need to stay with those managed care programs, I help to build a hygiene department that integrates assisted hygiene in a way where we can work people through the system, where the producer, just like in dentistry, the dentist may have 3 chairs and is working between 3 chairs and seeing 3 patients at the same time with auxiliary staff. That's really what I promote in hygiene. And it's not about, because I've gotten a lot of pushback over the years, because people misunderstand and hygienists misunderstand when I talk about assisted hygiene. It's not a prophy mill. It's about taking phenomenal care of your patients, but really doing it in a way where you're doing better care. You're doing it with auxiliary staff that doesn't cost $50 an hour, $40 an hour, $60 an hour, or if you're on, percentage, then it's sometimes cost the dentist a lot more. And so really what it's about is really understanding that we need to understand the business of hygiene, and understand that we need to put leaders in place, because there's hygienists out there that are really, really seeking to be business owners and really know what to do. They just need a dentist to partner with, that they can really help to grow the practice and really help to benefit the dentist and the practice and the patients overall.
So my job is to estimate what they're thinking. You've been doing this consulting for over a decade. right?
Yes. I've actually been doing it for almost 16 years, and then I've had my own business now for over 10 years.
Okay, so I know what my homies are thinking. They're saying, okay, Stephanie, you're up there in rich old Chicago. They all got money. I'm down here in Bumblebutt Parsons, Kansas, and what you fancy people do up in rich Chicago ain't going to work in Parsons, Kansas. What would you say to that?
So I love that question too, because we're actually in Elgin, Illinois. Elgin, Illinois is a very blue collar, very, very low income in some areas place to go. One of the biggest issues and hurdles that we deal with is the economy. We know that everything crashed in 2008, 2009, 2010, and our economy here has not, it really has not rebounded like the rest of the country. And so I'm, here to tell you that one of the biggest things that we need to do as a practice is we need to understand when you're looking at growing your hygiene department and you're looking at getting away from managed care programs, which I am a big fan of trying to clear those out of your practice, because I believe that dentists sign on to those programs out of pure fear. They don't know what's coming, they don't know what to do, and they're not sure where to start. You've got these young people coming out of school that have no business education. And so one of the things that I really think is important is that they focus on not being afraid and going and signing into plans for that reason, but actually taking control. It's like the thing that I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and what he always says, he said, if you're going to take the island, you got to burn the boats. And what that means is it's really taking back the ownership in dentistry. And if dentists would really understand that they can band together and they can turn this whole managed care thing around, because it's really insurance companies who are kind of dictating and controlling the money that and the revenue that's being made. And it's really not being made by the dentist as much as it is by the insurance companies, because they're denying claims. I've seen over the last 6, 7, 8 years with periodontal disease. And the interesting thing with insurance companies is they are denying claims for periodontal disease. And then I get letters from the insurance company telling me that I'm overdiagnosing, and they flagged me in the system because I'm overdiagnosing because, and then this is their line on the bottom, because only 3% of dentists are diagnosing periodontal disease, and I'm diagnosing 63% of for my patients in, let's just say, Cigna or Delta Dental or whoever it is. And it's been an interesting thing that I've seen in having to fight back with insurance companies, and I'm winning the game and winning the battle and winning the war, because I'm sending them this information regarding oral systemics and how the link between, inflammation and gum disease and their overall health is connected. So you see a huge push in the whole Obamacare and this whole managed care program and how it's put together. You're seeing a transition in how insurance companies are paying. And if medical plans and dental plans are with the same company, we're starting to see that they're paying for a lot more periodontal therapies. They're paying for a lot more care within dentistry, because they understand that if we get patients healthy from the mouth and we get rid of inflammation, they see a lot less visits to the hospital for heart attacks, strokes, big things that cost them millions of dollars a year in revenue.
So I think it's interesting what you said about one of the most amazing books I ever read like 20 years ago. I think it's an MBA school, and it's in 90. It's called The Profit Zone. And they took all the different sectors, like they took auto. And they said everybody always thinks it's the dentist, it's GM, Chrysler, and Ford. They actually make the least net income. But the people who finance the cars, GMAC financing, shut off $3 profit dollars for every $1 GM did. And then you look who's advertising all day long. It's the auto insurance, the Geico, the Progressive, that famous lady Flo with what is she with? Progressive or So the insurance companies actually are making more money than the guys on the line. But I want to ask you this specific question. So you're in Elgin, Illinois, right?
Yes.
How big a town's Elgin?
Elgin is about population of about 60, I think it's 60 to 70,000 people.
Okay, and I'm in Ahwatukee, which is 80,000. So we're talking about there's two markets in any segment you go. There's a volume market for their Taco Bell. There's a value market, a sit-down Mexican restaurant. A volume market the number one selling car in America is a Ford Escort, and then there's a value market, a Honda Civic. So would you say in your town, would you say it's half the 60,000 are into volume, managed care, hygiene assisted, and half are value, sit down Mexican restaurant, one hygienist sitting there for an hour? Or is that not how you see it in your mind? How do you see the volume value percent play in a rural American town of 60,000? I mean, obviously 60,000 people aren't going to buy a Lamborghini. And obviously 60,000 people aren't going to take the city bus or walk to work. So how do you see the market segmentation of volume versus value in percentiles? And does the volume versus value affect the decision of having hygiene assisted or a hygienist sitting there for a whole hour with you?
So that's a really great question. One of the things that I think is so important when you ask that question is understanding that if you take that thought out of the equation and really think about building a practice from the perspective of taking fear out of it and building the practice from the perspective of really integrating a whole chemistry within a practice, of building your practice from within and really building it from the foundation of the culture that's in your practice, because I think that's where there's a disconnect. People have a fear and they say, well, I can't do this in my area because, and then they have a list of excuses. And what I'm saying is if we help people to understand that culture is everything within the business, and if you build a team and establish a team that helps you to grow your practice from within, we're in a really difficult area, a really downturn market, and people losing a lot of jobs. I mean, we have Sears, which is, 10 miles down the road. And I don't know if you've seen, but Sears is closing another 100 and some stores over the next year. So we're going to have, again, people losing their jobs and trying to figure out how to build our practice without managed care programs. And the interesting thing is we're getting about 50 new patients a month right now because we treat people well. From the time you call our office and they get the first person on the phone, tell their hygiene visit or their dental visit or their dental consulting time where they're looking at doing cosmetics, whatever interaction you have within our practice, you get such a gold standard of care that people tell other people about our practice and want to come to our practice. We have people that are in managed care programs that have been patients for a long time, and we know it's a huge influx of changes in insurance right now, and people, all companies are tending to go to the managed care approach, and we have people not leaving our practice because they know that they're not going to get that kind of care anywhere else. And it's really about creating such value within the business that you don't have to focus anymore on the fear and signing up for these managed care programs or people that are going to have value, because there are those people, Howard, that are going to be seeking value, and they're going to want, like you said, the Honda Civic versus the Lamborghini. Our practice is a Lamborghini practice that promotes that we're a place for everyone. And the other thing about that, helping dentists to understand how to build a business, is why not have another business within the business? Why not hire associates that are just coming out of school and having a different fee schedule for let's say the practitioner that's been out for 25 years and the new practitioner that's been out for 6 months? Why not build that business within the business where you have someone that can come into your practice and still afford to be there and get the kind of great care that you can offer, but offer it from somebody that maybe doesn't have the 25 or 30 years of expertise with all of the credentials, like, certification or credentials of validation through like the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry or other outlets like that.
The Sears story is so sad because they made one, in my opinion, they made one blunder. So when we were little, all the big stores, Sears, J.C. Penney's, all those stores were in the big cities, and nothing was in the rural. And everybody in the rural just got the Sears catalog, which started in like 1943, and they closed it down in 1993, 50 years later. And Sam Walton realized that these big stores were never going to come to Bentonville, Arkansas. So he started crawling, when the year I was born, 62, started crawling around the rural area, putting up all these stores because Sears wouldn't go there. They were just supposed to buy a catalog. And when Walmart got just big enough to where now the Sears catalog was no longer profitable because Walmart was in 30 some states. They closed down that catalog in 1993. And then who opened the next year? Amazon, 1994. And Amazon took from 1994 to about 2005 to build up the mail house distribution system that Sears already had. And it's like if
Yeah.
Sears would have seen the internet like Jeff Bezos did and just said, okay, we're just going to move this catalog online to a website, Sears would be crushing it today. And they missed that technology. It's kind of like the era of silent movies. I mean, the movies were silent from 1895. I mean, for 40 years, no one thought, hey, you got a record player over here. You got a silent movie. Let's put chocolate on your peanut butter and make a Reese's. I mean, just amazing. So, what are my homies doing? So you're talking to thousands of dentists right now, and they said, I got a lot of problems. And I don't mean to be rude, but my hygienist says I think she's spoiled. She's not going to want to work 2 rooms. I swear to God, she always takes an hour. If the patient has an upper denture, a lower partial, and only has 2 canines, she'll schedule an hour. She told me 10 years ago that these the developing x-rays takes 10 minutes. So if I put in all these digital x-rays, it'll save her all this time. But no time came off the hygiene appointment. I mean, I put in all digital x-rays and the cleaning's still an hour. And then she said, if you buy this voice-activated perio charting, I can go faster and the cleaning's still an hour. And they basically say that hygienists and school teachers are the same. No matter how much money you spend in education, the teacher says, well, I just want a smaller class size. It's like, well, we just spent another $1 trillion. And you still want a smaller class size. So a lot of people are sitting there saying, Stephanie, I don't think you get my hygiene. I think Sally Sue ain't going to do anything you say. She just wants an hour, no matter what. So if he goes to Now To Wow Hygiene and wants you to do a consultant, what will you go down there? Is this online training? Do you do on site? How much does it cost? What can you do for my homies?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And one of the really big things that everybody needs to understand is that there are going to be those hygienists that don't want to change. And do you really want them in your boat, rowing the boat with you, or do you want to make a change with those hygienists? And absolutely, I've heard for years and years, since the first day I got out of school, it was about the prima donna hygienist. And I get it. I'm on a lot of forums on Facebook and social media, and I watch what other hygienists put out there. And there are those that are going to be leaders, and there are going to be those that want to just be the followers. And I will say the biggest suggestion that I can make is percentage. If a hygienist doesn't want to work hard, then she should be paid accordingly. You have hygienists out there that are absolutely gonna kill it, crush it, are gonna make a lot of money for you, and are gonna make a lot of money themselves because they're looking at I always had an equation. If I was away from my kids, because my kids is my biggest reason why, if I had to be away from my kids, I want to be doing everything I can to be the most productive person that I can while I'm away from my kids. Because when I'm home, I'm 100% home with my kids. And so really it's about sitting down and talking to those staff members and not just hygienists, but across the board, and helping them to understand that this is a team approach. And the more productive we are in the hygiene department, the more successful everybody will be. But this is really about changing from an hourly wage, looking at percentage, and really looking at the dollars and cents of this. And when you sit down with the hygienist and help them to see the dollars and cents, I mean, this will blow some doctors away when they're listening to this, but I was making, a very large 6-figure income. Working 3 to 4 days a week, I was making more than most dentists out there. And the key to success in this whole thing is really looking at the hygienist as a producer and helping them. If they want to work at, like you said, if they want to see a 6-year-old child and spend an hour with that child, then that's probably not your practice is probably not the practice you want that hygienist in. The days of prima donna hygiene are over. And if we have one of those in our practice, I think we need to really look at replacing those people. And I've got some good solutions. There's a company that we use and that I help my clients to use in helping them to pick the right person and put the right person in place. And it's called thefocusgroup.com. And I have a gentleman by the name of Scott Olson that I work with that does he does testing, personality testing. And this personality testing isn't like the DISC test. I would equate it to probably the best test I've ever seen. I thought it was false a couple times, and I've had to learn the hard way that this test knows more than you do, even with the person in front of you and how well people can interview. The test does not lie. This really helps you to know these people that are really going to take the leadership role, or they're going to take a backseat role. They're really going to help you to integrate, let's just say oral systemics and oral DNA testing. And I know one of the biggest complaints and the biggest problems with dentists is they spend $60,000 or $100,000 on new technology and equipment, and then it sits and collects dust. And that's one of the most frustrating things that as dentists we deal with is providing great technology, but then it's not utilized. And so what I suggest is really looking at percentage, really getting people on a percentage scale, anywhere from like 29 to 33% for hygienists, and then looking at anything that they put through their operatory, anything except for an exam, really putting them on percentage. Because if you're looking at doing, let's just say 29 to 33%, I think is a good range, depending upon the market.
29 to 33.
Yes. And when you're looking at that, I have some doctors who do the 29%, but they also do, paid vacations, or sometimes they'll just do straight 33% and they won't have any additional benefits. So
now,
it's kind of.
Who gets the exam? The associate doctor who comes and does the exam, or the hygienist?
The dentist gets the exam. Every time the dentist gets the exam,
What
they're doing
does
the final.
Get? Not
the hygienist So x-rays, if they're taking their x-rays, they would get x-rays, they would get their prophies, they would get their scaling and root planing codes, your 4341, 4342 codes. Anything that comes out of their hygiene department, fluoride, if they're doing fluoride, anything that basically can be charged out with a CDT code from a hygienist is what a hygienist should be getting paid for. So when they understand that if you're charging out a scaling and root planing, and I'm a big proponent of not doing quadrant scaling and root planings, I don't believe in quadrant scaling and root planings. When you do full mouth periodontal disease and you're treating full mouth periodontal disease, you can't do quadrant scaling and root planing. You're not helping the patient to get healthy. You're not treating the disease or the infection. And so in one of those cases, let's just say you're charging $1,000 up to, I know some offices charge $1,500, $1,600. For that hygienist, they're making around $400, $300 an hour, in that one visit. They're making a lot of money, and your practice is making a lot of money. It's really about designing and developing a team that's really a business within the business, and really helping, like you said, managed care. It's 82% of practices have it. It's a problem, and how do we overcome the hurdle and the problem? And I suggest that really looking at percentage on collections is a really great way to do it.
Wow. Now, and what percent of the time would this be assisted hygiene?
I mean, to me, I'll tell you, I will just be honest. Doctors ask me all the time, how did you produce $540,000 working 3 days a week? And that was my production. That wasn't my other hygiene. We have 3 other hygienists in our practice. So we do about, right now we're doing about 1.5. I think we're hitting about 1.7. We're on target for this year coming up is what we're looking at. But the way to do it is really with assisted hygiene, because I can't do $500,000. It'd be like asking a dentist to clean his own room and to take his own x-rays and to mix his own cements and to do all of those things that are extremely important in a practice. It's just as important for those things to be done in hygiene. And I will tell you, I work between a couple rooms, and I love what I do because I'm no longer racing around and doing a prophy mill. What I'm doing is actually doing phenomenal dentistry, taking great care of people, and I'm able to spend more focused time with those people, teaching them and helping them to get healthy. Really taking a look, and I've trained my hygiene assistants now. The problem with my hygiene assistants is they get so good, they decide to leave me and go to hygiene school, and they come back and work for us. So
what do hygienists make in your area, and what do you see around the United States?
So I'll give you
on hourly for hourly.
Per question. Anywhere in our area, it can go from $30 to $35 an hour starting out as a new hygienist up to like $50 an hour. And I will tell you that in our practice with our system, our hygienists are making upwards of like $80 to $100 an hour. And I know dentists would go, "Oh my gosh, how that's crazy. How can I afford that?" The reality is when you're making $1.7 million in hygiene only, you can afford to pay a hygienist well if your production is going to be up, your patients are going to be better taken care of, your volume is going to be up, the number of patients that are interacting in your practice with the new culture that you're bringing to the practice, everything gets better when you look at bringing in assisted hygiene and increasing revenue in the hygiene department, because really most patients are seen in that hygiene department more than they're seen anywhere else in the practice.
And you've been in this 16 years, you say? Isn't it safe to say you've been in hygiene 16 years?
I've actually been a hygienist for 25 years this year.
25 years. Wouldn't you say that hygienists were a lot more rare and worth a lot more money 25 years ago than today? Don't you think on the supply and demand, they've opened up a lot of hygiene schools? I mean, I see a lot of dentists with these legacy hygienists, and they don't realize that since they hired their hygienist, their state's added 3 more hygiene schools and a lot of people. So don't you think there's been a lot of downward pressures on hygiene wages since 2008, the financial crash?
Absolutely. So it's interesting, when I got out of hygiene school and got into the practice, I think I was making like $20 an hour, I think is what I was making. And then, over time, in Chicagoland area, the wages went up, 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 up. But the interesting thing is I always worked in practices where there was multiple hygienists, and I would fight against the fact that, like you said, hygienists want to see one patient an hour. They want to just milk the system. If there's a cancellation, they want to go read a magazine. And I just couldn't see that being the way I wanted to practice, because I could see that there was a better way. And I had a lot of interactions with a lot of business people early on that helped me to see, if I went to the dentist and said, "Hey, how can we make this a win-win for everybody?" So this has been something that over the years of me practicing in hygiene, I've really cultivated a way to make it a business within a business and really become really productive. And that's how the percentage came out of it, because it was like, hey, I've got this hygienist that's sitting next to me that's seeing, 8 patients in a day, and I'm seeing upwards of, 10, 12, or I'm doing perios. I'm seeing a full day, because I do what's called cosmetic days in our practice. We have cosmetic days where he doesn't want to see me. He doesn't want me to tap on his shoulder and ask for an exam. He doesn't want to be bothered because he's focused on big cases. So we do perio days. We can give anesthetic in our state, which is awesome because that helps that. But I'll see anywhere from maybe 5, depending upon the schedule of the day, 5, 6 perio cases, which is an $8,000 day for me.
I want to. I'm half done with I've got a half hour. I want to switch gears completely out of business to our journey. You said you've been a hygienist for 26 years. When I was in dental school, when I was in college from 88 to 87, that was the era of AIDS came out. And the one thing that AIDS did around the world is it made every single human on earth know about STDs, and that, when I was little, you're worried about getting some girl pregnant. And then it turned into, forget a baby, you could die. And the whole world got religion on STDs. Here it is 30 years later, and the whole world still doesn't even have a clue that you have that newborn baby. It doesn't have streptococcus mutans, it'll never get a cavity. It doesn't have Peyton's virus, it'll never get gum disease. It doesn't have HPV, it'll never get oral cancer. That doesn't have herpes, it doesn't have anything. And then you pass that baby around, and every grandma and grandpa kisses it on the mouth. I go into dental offices, and there's dentists and hygienists that have seen grandma every 3 months for periodontal disease for 10 years, and they've never even seen her grandpa husband. It's like, if you saw this lady every 3 months for chlamydia, would it take a decade for you to say, "Hey, grandma, are you sleeping with some guy that has chlamydia?" I mean, and now they're starting to realize for the first time that the mouth is actually connected to the rest of the body. I mean, because it was supposed to be sitting on another shelf. So do you really see that that oral systemic, and that you can't treat the wife for perio if she's kissing on some husband with a bombed out wisdom teeth and 6 millimeter gingivitis? I mean, how long do you think it's going to take for the whole world to treat kissing like they do sex and STDs? How long do you think that will take?
That's a great question, because that's been one of my frustrating points about since I've gotten into hygiene and since I was introduced to the whole oral systemic thing, and I've been doing oral systemics. I was the very first office actually to do some of the bacterial testing that came into this country. I was one of the beta testing offices, and I've grown in my thought process about this. I mean, let's just face it. Exactly what you're talking about, all those diseases that you were just throwing up, including HPV, are all communicable diseases. And you can't treat perio in your practice and treat the wife without treating the husband and actually treating the whole family. So a perfect example, I do bacterial testing. It's a big part of our practice. It's a big practice grower. It's a really integral part of making your hygiene department very robust and very successful. We use oral DNA labs, and I know that you had them on and spoke on one of your prior podcasts, which is phenomenal. But this is really key to success, because when you do a bacterial test, not only on one family member, but you do a bacterial test on all family members, they all look exactly the same. You could overlay all of that information. And when I'm out speaking at all these large meetings, I have specific examples of husband and wife testing that I put up on the screen and show them that it's side by side, exactly what you're exactly what you're looking at is what we should be treating. And it's interesting. The code finally came out. The 4346 is a new code that's coming out in 2017, and it's helping, I think, to progress us to move forward. I'm a little bit frustrated with the code, but that's a separate issue. But the interesting thing is with this 4346 code is it's for people that have slight inflammation, but they don't have bone loss or loss of attachment. And with this code, what we can now do is for those children who have, let's just say we're dealing with a family and you have a child that has braces and they have hyperplastic overgrowth, they've got significant inflammation, and we're blaming the kid for not brushing their teeth, but you don't see any plaque present. The reality is a lot of times those kids have a significant disease. They are infected with the bacteria that's going to cause bone loss. It's going to cause loss of attachment. It's going to cause further issues, but yet they don't have the clinical signs of periodontal disease that we would have to look through the insurance companies and how insurance companies look at it. So insurance companies won't pay for scaling and root planing, but yet this child has active infection, active disease. What do we do with these patients? And so the nice thing is sometimes we can use the 4355 debridement code, but sometimes that isn't good enough, because I think, a lot of these kids, and I'm seeing periodontal disease. I don't know if you're listeners, but I think overall, I've seen more kids with periodontal disease since the last downturn in the economy than I've ever seen. And I think it was the stress of the parents getting infected, and then this infection passing through the families, because I've seen kids 15, 16, 17 years old with actual bone loss and significant disease process happening, and it's a communicable disease. People share, I'm sorry, when my cup is in my house when my kids were younger, it was a community cup. I could never have something to drink that wasn't one of my kids. They would always pick it up and drink out of it, and you're absolutely right. Babies are born with a sterile mouth, and it takes to about 18 months old for them to start building and colonizing bacteria. And those are the kids, that we see with rampant decay at 3 years old. Those are the kids that we see with gingivitis when they're coming to the dentist. And absolutely, this needs to be understood as a family disease. This is a communicable disease, and people can pick up infections from, HPV can not only be a sexually transmitted disease, but can be picked up from a grocery cart at the grocery store, if you happen to put your hands in your mouth, or, it can be sexually transmitted. But those are conversations that we need to have in the hygiene department. And what we need to do is really look at treating overall disease. Inflammation, you can have patients with acute inflammation or chronic inflammation, but we really need to start looking at inflammation. I have a rule in our practice, and we follow and live by this rule: zero tolerance bleeding. If a patient has bleeding in their mouth, they have infection. So when you do a bacterial test, I can say with all certainty, I've never seen somebody with bleeding in their mouth that hasn't come back with a high level of infection. Now, they may not have the clinical signs that say what insurance is going to cover, but it's still somebody that needs to be treated. Why wait for clinical destruction to take place before we treat these people, treat their infection, and get them healthy?
So, I think the what's gonna make this all hit the surface first is the insurance companies are acutely aware. One of the most expensive patients they insure is the pregnant girl who has a preemie. And if you drop a 3 pound baby, it's going to cost Cigna $1 million. And one of
Correct.
the biggest risk factors they have identified is the periodontal disease somehow inflames the health of the baby, and this human decides it's a good idea to get this baby out from inside of her right now. And when you look at the cost of a preemie, and they're thinking, holy moly, maybe medical insurance should cover dental, and maybe every girl that's pregnant should be rushed off to a hygienist, because how much does it cost to put her through hygiene for 9 months versus having a 3 pound baby? And so
Yeah,
that's
so
gonna so
that's so interesting too that you say that, because we've seen an increase in the number of insurance companies that are now covering full coverage for periodontal therapy for your pregnant patients that have and the biggest concern with them when we do a bacterial test is there's a yellow zone of bacteria, a fusiform bacteria. The fusiform bacteria in itself can be present in a pregnant woman. The problem is when they get a primary infection, it becomes a secondary issue. So let's just say that they get bronchitis or a really severe cold, something like that. What happens is this fusiform bacteria now attaches onto the virus and can actually transport over and through the placenta and can cause infant death or preterm labor. This is reported. Dr. Yipping Han out of Case Western, there's significant cases. Your listeners can actually look this up. There's been reported cases. They've done a lot of autopsies on babies that were having premature birth or stillborn births from this fusiform bacteria. So you're absolutely right. And the interesting thing is this is where I'm having a breakdown and a problem right now, is it's not with hygienists not wanting to treat the people. It's with us getting the clearance from the OB offices, because there's still a breakdown in the education and helping obstetrics understand that their patients are at risk if they have active infection in their mouth. And we're getting a pushback and saying, well, let's just wait till they're done being pregnant before we treat it. And we're saying, no, we need to treat this while they're pregnant so that this bacteria doesn't affect the outcome in an adverse way. And I had this exact same thing happen a few years back. Had a patient that came in, we did bacterial testing, positive for the fusiform bacteria, very high risk issue. And the OB said, absolutely not. You can't treat my patient. And I said, we're in the second trimester, which is the best trimester to treat her. I said, I really am suggesting, I had doctor on the phone. He said, I'm really suggesting that we treat this patient. And the OB said no. Unfortunately, that was at 28 weeks. And at 32 weeks, she delivered a very unhealthy baby. So, then you go back to that OB and you say, okay, here's what's going on. And the frustrating thing is we can't treat if the OB doesn't give us clearance. And so there's a very big shortcoming right now in the educational process that's going on in medicine that doesn't understand how dentistry is integrated. And that's where the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health comes in, is they are there to really integrate dentistry and medicine together and help to educate across those lines, because it's always been a separate entity and we've never crossed lines. And I think with that organization, they're going to help. And then Dr. Amy Doneen and Dr. Brad Bale with their heart and stroke prevention, they're doing a phenomenal job at being able to educate in dentistry and in medicine now and integrate that information between heart and stroke and all of the information that's out there with inflammation in the body and how dentists truly make a difference. And they're really helping to connect dentistry and medicine together and really get the communities both talking.
You know, that's so profound what you just said. You just blew my mind because when I was little, the pediatric dentist would sit back and wait till the general dentist referred the kid, and it was usually too late. They had a bad experience. They got scared. They were mishandled. And the early pioneer pediatric dentist said, I'm not waiting for a general dentist to scare the kid. I'm going to go straight to the pediatricians and start getting the referrals from the pediatrician before this kid ever even sees a dentist. And those are the ones who built the biggest offices. And now what you just said, my walnut brain never thought about it, is to get one of these pregnant women an information package and start taking your hygienist and every OBGYN in your Ahwatukee to lunch. I mean, we done doctor lunches and presentations for medical offices over the years when sleep apnea came out and things like that. But my God, I need to get a list. Ryan, that sounds like a really good project for you to do. Of every OBGYN in Ahwatukee, and I need to. Where could my homies get a package of these articles about pregnant women? Because when you're a grandpa like me, you care more. I care the most about my 4-year-old little Taylor. Now I barely care about my 4 kids who are 21, 23, 25. You know, I mean, so I would think the number one passion and purpose of any civilization should be the newborn baby, not grandpa. And so how would my homies get a packet of education to go convince an OBGYN with your hygienist that this is linked to premature babies? And we need you to tell all your patients to get their teeth cleaned. And by the way, we have a dental office. How would they get that information concisely?
So that's a great question.
And when are you going to write an article about this for Dental Town Magazine and Hygiene Town Magazine?
You know what? I can write it for you whenever you want it. I'm ready.
I want it because that has more purpose than placing an implant on grandma who lost her teeth.
And you know, to be honest with you, the problem with placing an implant on grandma who lost her teeth, she still has those active bacteria present. And if they haven't done a bacterial test, they still don't know. And they place these implants in, and then they wonder why we have implant failures or we have other things going on, like interleukin-1 gene, which has caused a hyperinflammatory response, all of those things. But the best way, and this is a part of growing the practice as well, is just like you said, having conversations in your community with not just your OB offices, but looking at talking to cardiologists, talking to, the orthopedic surgeons. Orthopedic surgeons, it's a really interesting thing. Talk about a great way to grow your practice. Why do orthopedic surgeries fail? They don't fail because of a bad surgeon. They fail because of secondary infection. And the reality is it's almost laughable that our community has a patient come to get dental clearance and they come in, we look around the mouth and we say, yeah, okay, you're okay to have surgery. How do we really know? We don't know what we can't see. And the bacterial test should be at the forefront of that. And in having conversations with the orthopods in our area, they were going crazy. They're like, wait, I never thought about this before. You guys are all giving us clearance, but yet we still have failures. And then we have these massive infections. And the problem is that then our surgeries fail and the patient is suing us because they think that we were the problem or we were the source of the infection. And the reality is most of the time it was probably the patient that was the source of their own infection. So there are places, the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health is probably one of the best resources out there to be able to get this information and to have the community be able to get this information to them. Dr. Lee Osler, he's out of the West Coast, and he's a really, really great resource. He's got a company that will actually give you binders. He actually, in the company, he actually has a resource of giving you videos that you can show in a presentation and a slideshows that you can show in a presentation when you go to the hospital so that it's all built for you. And it's a great way to be able to connect with the medical community. And really, that's where your referrals come from. And that's why when I say to you, I'm getting 50 referrals a month, it's from interpersonal relationships, from patients that have had really great relationships with our practice. But the other really big way that we get it is from the medical community, of integrating the medical side and the dental side together and starting to understand that when you know oral systemics, you can grow your practice like crazy. And dentists have their plates full. They're going to courses and they're learning about cosmetic dentistry. They're going to courses and they're learning about new techniques and how to do better care and what new technologies they can bring into their dental chair. Why not have the hygienist be the person that is the leader in oral systemics? Send them to the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health program every year. It's always in the fall. The next one's coming up will be in Utah this year in September. And I'll tell you, what a great way to grow your hygiene program and to really make your hygienist be the leader in your practice and grow your revenue extremely well by educating them in an area where they've never ever knew before that bleeding isn't okay, that zero tolerance for bleeding is the only way to practice hygiene, and increasing your periodontal therapies from 3%, 8%, which is unfortunate that that's where most dentists are at in their practices, and getting to 62, 63%. If insurance companies see across the board that we're all treating infection and we're no longer accepting people getting sick and dying on our watch, everything changes.
Yeah, the dentists don't understand that group insurance billing. Like the dentists always get mad because they kick the composite fee down to the amalgam fee. When I'm having lunch with the insurance guys, we say, yeah, we do that because Doc hasn't done an amalgam for 25 years, so they never upgraded any of their fees for amalgam. So why would we pay at a $250 composite when the last time he submitted a fee for an amalgam was $100 in 1985? It's like, they wouldn't do that if everybody made their fees. You mentioned two things that I still haven't found. You said the focus group, but when I go to the, I haven't been able to find that www. It's www.
Let me pull it up to make sure I have it correct. It's www.thefocused, so FOCUSED.
FOCUSED.
Group.com.
The focused group.
Yes.
Group. And then the second thing I want to get from you, you mentioned a meeting in Utah. What meeting was that?
The American Academy for Oral Systemic Health meeting is coming up in September in Utah.
Find me that link and text it to me. The Oral Academy of Systemic Health is having
AAOSH.
And it's in Utah.
It's in Utah in September.
So if it's in Utah, it's just going to be a drunken alcoholic rage party.
Oh, I'm quite certain of that, right?
Every meeting I've ever gone to in Utah has just been an alcohol. Okay, so did you find that, Ryan? Okay, and what's the dates on that? Say the dates to my homies again. It's called there it is.
You got
so
it. So
if you go to AAOSH.org, American Academy Oral Systemic Health.org, their meeting is coming up. This says okay, yeah. So are you going to be at that meeting?
I will be at that meeting. Absolutely. I've been there every year. I've been on the board. I finished up my last board year. I was on the board for 6 years. I was president in 2015, 2016. So I just finished up my stint on my 6 years on the board. And so I'm officially a has-been, but excited about being on a lot of their committees and still working and progressing to move this movement forward, helping doctors to do great dentistry and to really, really help them to understand that this is just the beginning of this new wave. And I think that this is the biggest wave in dentistry, and there's money to be made. And one of the biggest pushbacks that I've gotten from some of the biggest dentists across the country is I don't know how to make this a profitable center. I don't really know how to equate this into money. And what I tell them is, what is your hygienist doing now? Have your hygienist be the focal point of the oral systemics in your practice and let them grow the practice from within. And the biggest question I have is, your hygienist producing $500,000 a year, even working 5 days a week? And if the answer is no, this is the answer that they need, is oral systemics, really understanding sleep apnea, treating people from their medical history, really helping to dig to the bottom of the medical history and understanding that it's not just their medical history, it's their family history as well. The question needs to be asked, what is your family history of heart disease? What is your family history of strokes? What is your family history of high blood pressure? All of those things matter. And I don't think in dentistry we even ask that question most of the time on our, we're all getting integrated now on computers, and we have the standardized, whether it's EagleSoft or one of the other computer Dentrix or whatever. we have this medical history form that we fill out, and nowhere on that medical history form, unless you formulate it yourself, do they ask about family history. And I think that that's a really critically important question.
Yeah, these are really exciting times because I mean, you guys, I think, is this a group that Chris Kammer started?
Correct. Yes.
And
Chris.
his father Jack started the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. And when I got out
Correct.
of school in '87, the revolution was cosmetics. We were going from silver fillings and gold fillings to tooth colored fillings. And then we had another revolution we lived through were implants. I mean, in the 1980s, the people who did them were quacks. They did Ramus frames, subperiosteals, and a lot of dentists were, everybody doing them was in and out of the local board, and some of them getting their license taken away. And now we're at the other end where Carl Misch just died, and implants are just standard of care. So Chris Kammer's dad was Jack was cosmetics, and Chris did this oral health systemic. And you're really at the if we're going to the moon, that rocket is still on the launch pad. I mean, everyone's kissing
Absolutely.
babies. Nobody in every college, people go to a bar, and if they think if they use something below the belt, there's no problem making out with a girl at a bar. They have no idea that the mouth is connected to the pancreas and the brain. They're finding these bacteria in Alzheimer's patients. They're finding them. Well, where are they finding P. gingivalis and bugs in the mouth? What other organs are they finding these bugs in that concern you?
You know, one of the biggest things that's happening is when they do bypass surgeries on patients, they actually take out those arteries, and then they do biopsies on those arteries that they replace, and they are loaded and filled with P. gingivalis. And that is one of the biggest things that people don't understand, is that people are dying on your watch because of active periodontal disease, and we don't know what we can't see. If you're not doing bacterial testing, it is the thing you need to implement on Monday morning. It is the thing critically important that you need to go to, oral DNA, Access Genetics, and really understand that they can help you to integrate it into your practice. I
You're
can
going to
send
write
them.
that article for Dental Town magazine that goes to 125,000 dentists every month, and another 80,000 digitally in 152 countries.
I would love to.
And who should get oral DNA tested? I mean, so you're gonna have who?
Everybody needs to be tested. I'll tell you, you know where people should start? When they bring it into their practice, do yourself a favor as a dentist and provide the test for every single employee in your practice. Because when you start there and you train yourselves on what's going on in your own office, it will help you to understand how to connect with your patients and how to treat and how to go from there. But I'll tell you, the best gift you can give to your staff is really helping to get them healthy as well. And I can't tell you the number of stories over the years that I get, because I speak to large audiences across the country at big meetings, and I'll get emails saying we didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't understand that I was sick. And I'll give you myself as an example, and I use myself as an example when I lecture too. I had a periodontal infection, and I test myself about once every 6 months. But the interesting thing is that I had a significant periodontal infection. Now, I had no bleeding. I had no signs of infection, but I knew I was really run down. I was running a schedule that was crazy. I had a lot going on, and I just felt run down. So I ran a bacterial test, and sure enough, I had some very high levels of infection. Well, what do you do to treat that? Because I didn't have clinical signs of disease. So do I need scaling and root planing? Well, no, I needed a full mouth disinfection for sure. And then I needed to get on products to help to rectify the problem before I saw clinical signs of destruction. Now, had I not done the bacterial test and had I not been educated, I probably would have been one of those people who had 4 millimeter pockets going to 5s, going to 6s, because of the panel of infection that I had, because my body was just worn down. I had a lot going on, and my immune system was being affected. So it's really about understanding that inflammation starts in the mouth, and if we can treat inflammation, the rest of the body falls in place, and really your hygiene department, it starts with them. They can really do a lot to take care of your patients.
Explain what you mean by that you had these bugs. So did you need quadrants for root planing curettage? No, but you needed full mouth debridement and some products. What did that mean? What is
Yes.
full
So
mouth debridement? What
that's a
products were you
question.
mentioning?
That's a really great question. So what I had to have done is I did full mouth disinfection. So we used our Cavitron with irrigators, and in our irrigants, what we use is we used to use chlorhexidine because that was kind of the standard of care, and now there's all of this new research out there, which a lot of your listeners probably haven't seen. But chlorhexidine inhibits some of the reattachment and some of the osteoclast, osteoblast. And it causes a lot of what we used to consider failure in our treatment. And we used to think that as clinicians, why when we did the scaling and root planing didn't it work? Well, the reality is we're starting to find out some of our products are actually inhibiting reattachment and some of the healing. So the chlorhexidine is kind of gone by the wayside, and we don't want to use that. But what we use is a product called let me pull it up for you so that I have it in front of me here so I can make sure that I give you all the proper information. It's a product called Tooth and Gum Tonic, and it's a company called Dental Herb Company, and I love this product. It's all natural, doesn't have any alcohol in it, doesn't cause any side effects for your patients that, let's just say you have a patient that's an alcoholic and you're using alcohol products in your irrigators and you don't know that they have that issue. You can cause significant issues for those patients. So the Dental Herb Company, I love them. They're absolutely phenomenal. You can go to www.dentalherb.com, or I can give you a phone number, 860-268-2389. And a gentleman by the name of Greg Carlins can help you out. But they have an awesome product, and it's actually it's the Tooth and Gum Tonic that I love, but I love all of their products. But the Tooth and Gum Tonic comes in a concentrated form, so it becomes much less expensive than buying the chlorhexidine in your practice and then running it through the irrigators, which costs you about a bottle for every patient. They have a concentrated form, which is only a small amount can be added with water into your irrigator, so it's not costing the practice an outrageous amount of money. And then we also put that in the goodie bags to send home with our patients, and that's what they use between their perio appointment and their follow-up visit. And I absolutely love that product. It takes a little bit of getting used to, a little bit different flavor, but I absolutely am crazy over it. So that's the product that I actually use in getting healthy. I actually also went on an antibiotic, and I know that there's a lot of controversy out there. Do we use antibiotics for oral issues? And it's really not about, and this is what your listeners need to understand, in this realm with the bacterial load that I had, I was more concerned about the inflammation processes that were going on in my body and getting rid of the bacteria in my vessels than I was about getting bacteria gone in my mouth, because I knew with the mouth rinses that I was using that I was going to lower those amounts, but I didn't know how much had already gotten into my bloodstream and it was already causing secondary infections somewhere in my body.
And I just another way to find it, I just tweeted the Dental Herb on my Twitter at Howard Fran. I found their Twitter site. I found their Twitter and tweeted. They're the Dental Herb Company. So on Twitter they're at Dental Herb Co. I love this stuff, but I'm old school, so I'm 54, a grandpa. So to me, the nasty tasting Listerine and this stuff, because this stuff is nasty. It's not nasty to me because my alternative when I run out of it, I'm 100% Irish. I just switch with Jameson whiskey straight. I swish and swallow. That's you recommend that too, don't you?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're probably a Bears fan.
Not a Bears fan. I am a diehard Packer fan. I'm extremely excited about the weekend coming up because I am a huge
wrong
Packer.
state. You're in Illinois. You are not in Wisconsin. You are not a cheesehead Brett Favre fan.
I am a crazy cheesehead number 4 Brett Favre fan forever. I was born on Bart Starr Day. That's my dad's claim to fame for me. So I am a huge Packer fan.
You know what I think would be the funniest thing you should ever do is with a green screen, you could do anything. So you need to go in the hygiene room and put a green screen behind it and put a blizzard snowstorm and say, this is how Packers fans, hygienists clean teeth. We even clean teeth. And because everybody that's normal like me in Arizona thinks, why don't those crazy fools put a roof over that stadium? I mean,
I
some of
love
those
it.
games, it's
Have
like a,
you ever been?
it's
Have you
what?
ever been? Have you ever been?
I have. You remember Lord's Dental Studio, and which when he was owned by Rennie Schellner, he used to have me come up there and speak. And right off to the side of that stadium is some of the most amazing, gorgeous conference rooms. So you're lecturing, looking out over the stadium. Oh my gosh! And that quarterback, what's his name? Aaron
Aaron
Rodgers
Rodgers?
is just his last 6 games were perfect. I mean, he's just throwing
See,
bullseyes,
he's
bullseyes,
here,
bullseyes.
so
Well,
I'm
hey,
hoping.
young lady, you have your work cut out for you because that was the fastest hour I've ever done. But I mean, I can't find anybody sitting next to me on the airplane that I talk to at the gym. I just can't find anybody who has any idea that there's bugs in their mouth, that they shouldn't be kissing newborn babies. When I have this conversation with every pregnant woman sitting in my chair, her eyes get this big, and and then they're like, "Well, I'm gonna kiss my baby," and then you say, "Okay, but let's talk about that. What's in your saliva? I mean, you kiss your
Did
baby. It's just we're this is at the very beginning of this whole movement."
did you see? I don't know if you saw this. It drove me crazy, and I could never find it again. It was a live video feed on CNN, and I just happened to be watching it. And our vice president, a baby was in the audience, and his pacifier dropped out of his mouth. The vice president picked up the pacifier, put it in his mouth, and put it back in the baby's mouth, and I almost fell on the floor. It made me cringe beyond cringing because I'm like, oh my gosh. And people thought it was funny and it was fun. I found it so offensive because again, you understand what I understand, which is this is a communicable disease, and what we don't know what we can't see, and we don't know what the vice president has, but the reality is what transferred to that baby off of that pacifier.
And the last note, I want to just end on one story. During World War One, everybody remembers World War One, but they don't realize that during World War One there was also the Spanish influenza, and I think it was 1917, and 5% of the planet died from the flu, and it was the biggest crime scene in the world. It killed more people than what World War One killed. And when they where did this come from? They trace it all the way back. The entire epidemiological breakout was traced back to one guy in Kansas. He got it from his pig. He was like 18. Then he got drafted to war. So then he went to Leavenworth Fort in Kansas, and that was where the first breakout went. But they didn't know what was going on. So then those troops were shipped out to New York. That was where the next outbreak was. And then wherever these troops went, it went all around the world. But the bottom line is, the last thing I want to leave it on is the other thing that nobody's talking about, and the research is piling up, is talk to a vet. There are diseases we are getting from our cats, our dogs. The Spanish influenza was the biggest lethal deal ever. It actually came from a farmer's pig. And I sleep with 3 cats. God only knows. When you said the oral DNA analysis, I'm going to go get my cats done to see. And what's funny about the cat is when they started sequencing DNA, they sequenced Streptococcus mutans, and the only other thing they found this from was picked up from a cat in the Fertile Crescent 15,000 years ago. So that pig gave a farmer influenza and killed 5% of the planet. And your husband drills and fills and bills decay like I do, because somebody kissed a cat somewhere in the Fertile Crescent of Iraq 15,000 years ago, where the Tigris and the Euphrates meet. And the whole world is starting to put this damn zoo together. And the last thing I want to say is that from the mouth to the other end, the anus, 30 feet, there are 12,000 species of identified bugs, bacteria, and viruses. But in the San Diego Zoo, they only have 4,000 species on display. So we have 3 San Diego zoos living in our gut. And people are just starting to wake up to that.
And 6,000 miles of highway of vessels in our body where those bacteria are flowing through. And so that's really, really when you think about it, that's from Los Angeles to New York. That's how long our vessels, if you linked them all out in one body, that's how much vascular system we have that the bacteria is flowing through and causing inflammation and causing disease. So you are absolutely 100% right. And when you're talking about pets, my kids all the time share whatever they have with the animals, whether it's a scoop of ice cream, on a spoon, whatever it is. It seems like they're always sharing with their pets. And so I've actually seen patients that have come in and we couldn't figure out where the source of the infection was coming from, whether it was that they weren't throwing away their toothbrushes and cleaning out the toothbrush drawer and going back in and because those patients, it's like sometimes, well, I just bought this toothbrush 2 weeks ago. Yes, but it needs to be disinfected, and they don't understand that. And so, that's another product that I love too, mouthwasher toothbrushes. They're antibacterial and they have silver nano on the brushes, on the bristles. I absolutely go crazy over those brushes.
They say again, mouth watcher?
Mouth watchers.
One word?
Yep.
MATCH. Mouth watchers. And mouth watchers, 2 words, antimicrobial silver toothbrushes.
Those are it.
Mouth watchers. Wow. That is amazing. So tell us about mouth watchers.
So mouth watchers is a toothbrush that has silver nano in the bristles. And it has really, it's made a huge impact in our practice because what we're seeing, especially, we've got a large amount of people, including myself, who travel a lot for business. And let's just face it, when you got your toothbrush in a hotel room, we don't know what it picks up. And so the silver nano in the bristles will not allow anything to grow on it. And actually it kind of repels any bacteria from growing on it and picking up any bacteria. So I love this toothbrush. I'm a huge fan of it. They are a much more expensive brush to bring into your practice, but I will tell you that I justify it by the way that we build our little goodie bags that we give to our patients. We give them a robust goodie bag, but then let's face it, they go and they tell other people about how great our practice is. So instead of using tons of money on outside mailers and marketing and, the coupon mailers and the value, I'm looking for the patient that really values what we're giving to them. And this mouthwasher toothbrush, we talk to the patient about it when we give it to them and tell them, this is a very nice toothbrush. If you want to buy other ones, we sell them up front now, and we actually sell them for, I think, $2.50 or something like that. The cost to them at Whole Foods is $5, and I've seen them on Sky Mall for $19. So they're out there, they're available, they're a phenomenal product. I absolutely love them myself. I could not go back to another toothbrush other than my electric toothbrush, which I love as well.
Okay, well, you've recommended a mouthwash, a toothbrush, an NFL football team. You just haven't recommended a beer or a whiskey. So that'll be what beer are you drinking during a Chargers game or a Packers game?
Okay, come on now. I'm a Wisconsin fan, so of course the Spotted Cow from New Glarus that you can't get anywhere else is the best beer.
Okay. Well, hey, seriously, I know you're a busy person. Thank you so much for all that you've done for dentistry. Thank you for being the past president 2 years in the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. You're a legend. You're an innovator. You're so smart. And thank you so much for coming on my show. And just remember that we mail a magazine to 125,000 dentists and 10,000 hygienists in print. 10,000 orthodontists in print each month, but it goes digitally farther than that all around the world. But if you ever want to write any of this up, because like I say, I think it's going to take society an entire generation to get this through their walnut. Because I saw it with HIV. I saw it with AIDS.
Absolutely.
Remember South Africa? I just lectured in Johannesburg and Soweto. They have a 25% HIV rate because they denied the research for a decade. And all those other countries, there's 58 countries in Africa, everyone else is under 1% because of the science deniers in South Africa. And you just look at what that did. And it's going to take, I don't know what it's going to take for people to realize maybe you shouldn't be kissing your cat, your dog, your girlfriend, and your grandma. Maybe there's a San Diego zoo of God knows what growing in grandpa's mouth. And why don't you guys just shake hands or bump fist? Why don't we just stop making out at the bus stop when we tell grandma and grandpa goodbye? Let's just fist bump and go on our way.
or the moms and the dads picking up the passy that drops on the floor, or the vice president and licking it off and putting it back in the baby's mouth. Because you're absolutely 100% right.
So you got your work
I mean,
cut out, and I think you've been doing an amazing job, and I'm honored that you came on my show today.
I'm super happy to come on your show. I'll do it again anytime, and I'd love to write an article for you. I had a great time today. Thank you so much for inviting me.